Hi guys, this is Shahadat, and today I'm going to speak to you about this little interview that Jaggi Vasudev ji gave to the Fox News in their Good Day News Fox in that program, and you can see or watch this video in YouTube, and the headline of the video is Sadhguru explains Namaste meaning. I'll show you the screenshot as well. So it says Sadhguru explains Namaste meaning to two ladies at an interview in New York. Now, interestingly, on this little interview, I actually found Sadhguru or Jaggi Vasudev ji to say a few logical things, and even more interestingly, being a Muslim, I found that what the messages that he is trying to convey are very similar to the messages that are propagated or that were promoted by our holy book, the Quran. You don't have to believe that. You can actually read the Quran. There is a translation, English translation of the Quran available for free. It's a PDF file. I'll put the link of the PDF file in the description of my video, and you can read it for yourself. Now, before getting into that, let me go step by step and kind of like discuss with you or tell you about the things that he talked about and how that resonated with me as a Muslim. Mind you, this is one of the rare videos where I found that I am actually agreeing with Jaggi Vasudev ji more than disagreeing. I've got some disagreements, but it's not as bad as in the other lectures cases. So to start with, he explained the idea of namaste, where in India, people from the Hindu and Buddhist religious background, they usually put their hands together like this and then say namaste. What Sadhguru explained is that by saying that, Sadhguru or people who do that, I personally don't, that's why I'm saying that people who do that, they, by doing that, they actually convey the message that they recognize the person they are looking at. So it's not the basically, it's not that we hold on to the preconceptions, presuppositions, or because that's a very common thing that happens in our human mind. As soon as we look at somebody, we have mechanism to start judging them. So this is a way of basically telling yourself that I shouldn't judge this person, or I shouldn't be judgmental, and at the same time you let this person know that he is important, respected. He is you are being respectful to this person, which is a very similar concept. I mean, in Islam, we've got a very similar concept, and the concept basically tells Muslims that you cannot judge anybody. It's just in Islam, it is forbidden. You cannot judge anybody, because judgment is only God's arena. I mean, this is power that God should execute, not you. I'm not obviously talking about judging somebody for their criminal activities. If there is a criminal activity taken place, and if we have witnesses, if we have proof, evidence to prove that somebody has done something wrong, then at that point we can judge the person in the worldly sense. That means we do punish the person if he is found guilty, but we do not be disrespectful to their personality. So the person, the act, the crime is something that we hate, we do not respect, we do not like, we condemn, but excuse me, but we do not look at the person with any kind of lens in front of us. So that bit I thought was quite interesting, because that pretty much shows a very strong similarity between the Islamic concept and Sadhguru's concept, even though we use a different kind of wording to express the same kind of thing. I won't say exactly the same thing, but it is the same sort of thing. As per Sadhguru's explanation, there are other people who will explain the meaning of namaste probably in a different way. So I'm not going I'm not taking the general meaning, or I'm not taking any other meaning, or comparing any other meaning that anybody can come up with. I'm comparing it to the meaning that Sadhguru explained in this particular interview. So that's the first thing. And then he talked about his inner engineering program. And listening to the concept, what I realized is it is basically just allowing people, giving people the tools, showing people the tools to control their emotions. So, and that is the way to achieve peace and happiness, tranquility in life, really. Once we know, because all our experiences are actually happening inside us. So we feel good, we feel bad, we feel terrible, we feel ecstatic, we feel joyful, we feel exuberant, or all these feelings are happening inside us, mostly probably in our brain. But some other parts of our body do respond to some of these emotional feelings as well. Like when we are really scared, our gut seems to respond to that fear. And so all these things are happening inside us. I mean, of course, things that are not happening inside us, we are not really affected by those things, in the sense that we would not experience them. When we get news of things happening outside our body, because of the way we react to those news, those information, we have certain experience. But again, the experience is happening inside our body. And I do agree with Sadhguru on that. And then Sadhguru talked about the user manual for human beings, because he talks about human body as the whole thing, because human beings are made with mind and body together, right? So he calls it a machine. I wouldn't call it a machine as in a general sense, because machine usually don't have a mind. So in our case, we have a body which is pretty much like a machine. It has got components. The components are doing their own job. It's a biological machine, not a machine kind of or artificial machine made of metal and all those things. It's not like that. It's a biological machine. But human beings are a bit more than that. Now he asks whether we have read the user manual for this human body or this being. That interestingly reminds me of the Holy Quran again. It's a bold claim, I would say it's a big claim, but what happens is, you can read the Quran yourself, as I said. If you read the Quran, you will find that Quran is talking about ideas. Quran is actually giving ways of navigating through the world. And if you listen to those the strategies that you are supposed to use, that the Quran is encouraging you to use, if you use those strategies, then you will actually be in a state of happiness. So that makes it quite interesting, the fact that 1400 years ago, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he came up with this message. Now, some people may argue that it was a book written by Prophet Muhammad, which we do not believe, and we've got reasons for that. The first one is Prophet Muhammad himself was an illiterate man. He couldn't read or write, and he didn't have that sort of, he never claimed to have written the Quran. So his claim throughout his life was it is revealed by God to him. And that kind of makes sense, because if you read the Quran and try to understand what it is trying to say, you will see that it is not possible for a Bedouin, illiterate Bedouin person to come up with all these information that can actually help you to become happy, to have a peaceful life, to become blissful. So that's interesting. That is interesting. Looks like Sadhguru is pretty much trying to, or not trying to, as in trying to copy, but he is trying to popularize the same kind of concepts. So there seems to be a similarity there. And now the next thing Sadhguru says is a couple of things. One is our body is accumulation of food, and our mind is an accumulation of impression. Now, I don't agree with either of these 2 points, because you see, the way he tries to explain is the body is an accumulation of food, and he tries to explain it in the sense that we were born like a little baby, and gradually we grew up to this size, and to have this bigger body, obviously you needed more stuff. So the food got attached with your body and basically became you. Now, I don't totally, there is some truth to that. Obviously, without food, we wouldn't survive. But at the same time, it's not the food itself that makes our body work. Say, for example, if I make a body with, earth, like a pottery kind of thing, and then fill it up with food, that is not going to function. So what I'm trying to get to, trying to show you the basic logic is, accumulation of food is not the only thing. There is other things which facilitate the extraction of useful stuff from the food that we eat, and we have mechanism to actually excrete the bit that is not necessary, that is not useful for us. So I don't agree with that entirely. And the next thing is, the mind is an accumulation of impressions. I don't agree with that either. If you think about it deeply, what you'll see that our mind is, Sadhguru kind of like got really close to it, but not exactly to the point, in the sense that if you think about our mind is basically like a container. It contains stuff. It contains information. And it takes all the information from the outside world. And the other thing the mind has, which is quite interesting thinking about it, is it has got a set of lenses in front of the mind. So when we look at the world, we look through these lenses. So and we get the impressions, and we then store them in our mind. And I guess in reality, mind is the concept that we associate ourselves with. We do use in language the word like my mind to point to the supernatural, or kind of like the metaphysical concept of mind, because we've got a brain. The brain is here, but and the mind seemed to be related to the function of the brain. So I guess just to differentiate between these two concepts, that our mind is not really the brain as such. We say it's my mind, just exactly in the same way as we say my body. But our association with our mind is a lot more, and the association is much more profound, I would say. So mind is not only accumulation of impressions. Mind is like a container where we have accumulations of impressions, like memories, plus it has tools to receive information and interpret them in a certain way. So based on these lenses that I'm talking about, these lenses are painted based on the impressions that we get. So like the color of the lens will depend on the impressions that we have. And so I wouldn't say that the mind is just accumulation of impressions, because it seems to be a lot more than that. So the next thing that Sadhguru talked about is a couple of other things that the good work he is doing on the to revive or to save the weaving industry of India. 136 different kind of weaving techniques he mentioned. I don't know about that, but it's a good effort. If these sort of things that these sort of technologies, it'll be a shame if we lose them. So doing anything to promote them, I think, is a good effort. I don't have any. I cannot really see a downside to that, which is nice. And then Sadhguru taught this mantra. Mantra means this practice where the ladies are told to say, "I'm not the body, I'm not the mind." When you inhale, you say, "I'm not the body." When you exhale, when you say, "I'm not the mind." And naturally, the question then arises, what am I then? At this point, Sadhguru argues that is how we start, that is how we basically find ourselves. I actually do not agree with that. The problem with this approach is if you cannot think of anything other than mind and body in a human being. So the human being has body. You damage the body, the human being dies. If you can mess up the mind, again, that impacts that person, that personality, that being massively. And that's we see that in people who have got mental illness, mental issues, and we see that they are not fully functional human beings with all the abilities. So but that's still a quite interesting concept, because what he's trying to teach people to say is pretty similar to the Islamic concept, where as Muslims we are told, God tells us, we believe, God tells us to say Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And what that means is, I am from God. In a sense, God sent me. I'm owned by God. And we are returning to God. We will definitely return to God. So we are from God, we are returning to God. In a sense, it says the same thing, that we are not what we think we are. This is not the And I find, I personally, it's my of course, it's the whole thing is my personal opinion. I find it more the Quranic idea more acceptable. Why? Because as soon as I say I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, the question becomes, what am I? And there doesn't seem to be anything to actually anchor myself. Okay, and if the anchor is gone, that causes quite a bit of frustration, quite a bit of uneasiness. I mean, if you think about it right now, you will feel, I'm not my body, I'm not my mind, then what am I? And immediately your mind gets full with not really a positive thing. Okay, I figured it out. It's nothing like that. It is more like a tension, a worry. What am I? So compared to that, if you take the Islamic approach, where we are saying, we are slightly differently saying, I'm not what I think I am. When we say that I'm from God, immediately we are telling us that the way I look at the world, the way people look at me, the big body I've got, the power that I have, the social status that I have, all these things are from God. So immediately I disassociate myself with these sort of things. And when I say, and I will surely return to God, what I do is I actually anchor myself with God. And immediately you will, I mean, if you try, I hope you will experience the same way as I do. You will feel that immediately you feel a much more profound peace, as if it's the same kind of thing that used to happen in our when we were child. Suddenly we are attacked by somebody. I mean, attacked in the sense that when kids, they play with each other, sometimes one is chasing the other. Sometimes things like those happen, and what we tend to do is we run. And if my mom or dad is around, or somebody I know is around, I go and take shelter with them, and they protect us. And immediately we feel like, I'm protected. And instead of simply saying, I'm not my body, I'm not my soul, the mind, instead of saying that, if I say, I'm not who I seem to think I am, because I'm from God, and I'm going to go to God, immediately it feels like the importance is in somewhere else, and feels like there is this superior power that is there to protect me. So immediately my self actually gets filled with this sense of fulfillment, which I think is much better way of addressing this. And once we do that, then it makes sense to actually ignore the things that are happening to us. There are lots of things, there are forces outside our control, and because of those forces, because of those actions, because of the activity of the world, we are affected. And sometimes it is enjoyable, sometimes it is not. Once we think that we are from God and we are going to go back to God, all these things suddenly become like not that important. So somebody sweared at me, it doesn't feel like it's that important. Okay, he sweared, but I'm going to go back to God, so it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really affect me. So, and on the other side, it doesn't stop you from enjoying the good things and doing the good work, because that seemed to give us a real sense of satisfaction. So instead of just saying, I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I personally would like the idea of even if you don't like the Arabic word inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un, you can simply say in your version, all these things, they don't, it's not in my control entirely. I'm just one of the players in this whole thing. So I'm doing things to others. Others are doing things to me. Sometimes we are doing things nice. Sometimes we are doing things not nice. Sometimes we are doing things knowingly. Sometimes we are doing things not knowing. So we shouldn't take these actions too seriously. That would be the way of thinking about it if you do not want to associate with the idea of a omniscient God's existence. So, and then Sadhguru talked about this analogy of living in accident. I don't agree with that analogy. It is the life is not happening by accident. It is just we are not preparing ourselves to accept whatever happens in front of us. I'm not trying to say that whatever happens, you just go with that. If somebody commits a crime in front of you, just keep quiet. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is things that you can do something about them. But when you don't have the power, when something is outside your capacity of doing anything about it, what you do is then you distance yourself a little bit, and then you put the responsibility on God and say, okay, this is outside my abilities. I cannot address this, and I leave it for the best judgment of my Lord. And immediately you feel light. As long as you do the best you can do, and then instead of getting worried after that, you let go of your worries. And that seems to me as a more effective way of looking at the world and dealing with the world on a daily basis. Now, I completely agree with the last thing that Sadhguru said, is that joy should be the natural way of living. And I completely agree with that. Unfortunately, we have lost that. And I will use an example, and probably that will give you a little bit of insight of how we can probably control our emotions a little bit and live a little bit better life. The example is the example of a lion chasing a deer. So the lion is chasing the deer for no other reason but it's the lion's food. The lion lives on meat, so it has to kill the deer or whatever animal it eats to survive. So the lion is attacking the deer, and the deer, obviously, to try to save his life, trying to run away. And during this session of the attack, lion's attack, it is running for its life. It is going through tension. Its stress is in the maximum level. But then what happens? I mean, if the lion managed to catch the deer, then obviously the deer is dead. It doesn't think anything after that. But if the deer actually managed to escape from the lion, what does it do? That's where we can actually take quite a bit of a quite interesting lesson from. What happens is it had the stress to the maximum. But as soon as it realized that the lion has failed to catch it and it has managed to escape, immediately it puts the thing behind. And instead of worrying about lion, even though the lion is in the surrounding. The lion just didn't disappear from the world, from the universe. The lion is somewhere nearby. But the deer is not worried at that point. It forgets about the lion, starts eating. And it only responds when it sees the lion approaching it or trying to attack it. So in our lives, if we live our lives exactly in the same way, instead of, because in many of the worries that we get are because of the fact that we think in our mind lots of things. We think of possibilities that can take place, even though they are nowhere near us. We think a thief might try to steal, a robber might come and attack us. Funny thing is, we keep on thinking about so much that we get stressed, even though there is no thief or a robber in our in the area where we could think of it as an immediate threat. So, and probably, how many times do we get? How many times you get a thief stealing from your home? Once in a lifetime, probably twice in a lifetime. It doesn't happen very often, but you worry about that every night. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be careful. You should be careful. You should make sure that your valuables, your property, your other valuables, you have taken enough care to make sure that these are protected. So, if a thief ever managed to come, then they will not just come and take things and just go. So you need to take precaution, of course. But once you have taken the precaution, at that point, you need to let go of it. And even after taking the maximum level of precaution, the highest kind of security, you still may get affected. You still may get face calamity like that. Something bad may happen. And at that point, what a Muslim does, I think is quite profound, is for everything that happened in the past, a Muslim looks at that and thinks, oh, okay, that's exactly what God intended to happen. That means I had this wealth and I don't have this wealth anymore. The wealth was stolen, but a Muslim will look at that and will think, it is in the past, this is something that has taken place, and that clearly means it was part of God's plan. And so then immediately, instead of blaming him for not taking precaution, not doing enough, not staying up all night, he just takes it as a normal thing. Okay, it was part of God's plan, so somebody else has taken it. Fair enough. Immediately, you actually disassociate yourself from that. You still may have a little bit of sadness, but when every time you think about it, if you put the responsibility on God, your shoulders will be amazingly light. And then from that point onwards, you can just go forward. You don't have to just keep on looking back. You just accept, okay, this was part of God's plan, so it has happened. And as a Muslim, that's how we tend to live. We live a life with the feeling of gratitude. So, looking at my life, I have a few incidents happened in my life that I didn't like, that I don't, when I think about them, I don't enjoy. But they don't haunt me anymore. They don't add any more pain in my soul, because when I think about that, even about the things that I have done in my life, I've done some terrible things, absolutely despicable, terrible things. And now I cannot do anything about that past. But because I have just put that burden on God, I've simply accepted that it was part of God's plan, and that's why I did that. I don't feel tied down with the guilt. It did teach me the lesson. Looking back, when I look at myself doing that terrible thing, I can see what I didn't see at that point. Now I can see that, and I do take that lesson that I should have acted differently, or in the future I have to act differently. And in the same sort of situation, if ever arises again, this time probably I'll behave in a much more acceptable, much more in a better way, and a way where I will be pleased with my actions, will be at ease with my actions. So I do take the lesson, but I don't take the burden. I don't carry the guilt all the time with me. And in my mind, that is a better way of actually having a peaceful life, even living among the most chaotic society. Even if the most chaotic things are happening around you, you will still find peace, because you are basically anchoring your existence, everything that's happening in you, with God. And yeah, I guess that's what I was thinking. So it's one of the interesting videos, because in most of the videos, when I talk about Jaggi Vasudev ji, what happens is I don't agree with most of the things he says. I'm going to make more videos in the future where I'm going to talk about the things that he talks about where it didn't make sense to me, and I'll explain why they didn't make sense to me. But for today, that is it. I'm quite happy that I found quite a few things that were quite similar. I'm quite happy with that. And if you like what I said, like my video and subscribe to my channel, I guess. And I'll hope to see you again. Take care. Bye-bye.